15 prescribes laws. 16 later he loses favor with his subjects. 17 is driven from the throne of the city. 18 he meets with a mysterious death. 19 often at the top of a hill. 20 his children, if any, do not succeed him. 21 his body is not buried, but nevertheless 22 he has one or more holy sepulchres. So Oedipus gets 22 points out of the 22. Theseus gets 20. Romulus 17. Hercules 17. Perseus 16, etc. I don't remember off the top how many Jesus got, but it was high.
You were just an illustration. You were meant for
There are other similar savior figures in the same neighborhood at the same time in history. Mithras, Attis, Adonis, Osiris, Tammuz, and so forth. And nobody thinks that these characters are anything but mythical, and their stories are so similar, most of them in fact having some kind of resurrection or another, sometimes even with celebrations after 3 days and so forth, that it just seems like special pleading to say, oh, well, in this one case, it really happened. The early church fathers understood this was a problem because they were already getting the same objections from pagans. They said, what you say about Jesus, we've been saying about the Dionysus and Hercules all the time. What's the big deal? And they didn't believe in them either anymore. And so the Christian apologists, the defenders of the faith, would say, well, yeah, but this one is true. And you see, Satan counterfeited it in advance because he knew this day would come. Boy, I tell you, that tells you two things right there, that even they didn't deny that these other Jesus-like characters were before Jesus, or they never would have resorted to something like that. Satan knew it would happen and counterfeited it in advance.
In case you're wondering, yes, this remains the explanation to this day. Fortunately for Christian leaders, they almost never have to offer it.
I'm wondering if either one of you are familiar with Osiris or Mithras or Dionysus?
I'm not.
Hardly at all.
I'm wondering if you've heard of Osiris or Mithra or Dionysus.
I've heard of Dionysus. The other two, I don't think I've heard of.
And do you know anything about Dionysus?
No, it sounds like an interesting Greek name, but no. Was he a contemporary of Jesus or the early church?
I'm wondering if you've heard any of those theories, or...
Well, you know, it's probably good that I haven't.
I've never heard of any of those gods.
Okay, but if you were...
I've never heard of any of those pagan gods, no.
No, I haven't heard about it.
Are you familiar with Osiris or Mithra or Dionysus?
I've heard about them, but I really haven't really got into it and making research on what it was about. I really haven't. So, but I've heard about it. It's been on the news a couple times, but I've never really paid attention to it. You know?
Is there anything that you know or that you've gathered from those articles?
I really haven't paid attention to it. It's all about Jesus, man. That's all you got to pay attention to, you know.
For thousands of years, humanity has been obsessed with blood sacrifice. Is it an accident that the story of the crucifixion of Jesus gave Christians a suffering hero whose flesh they could eat and whose blood they could drink. Of course, Christians today aren't obsessed with blood sacrifice anymore. Oh, well, except that they are. For many Christians, the Passion of the Christ was the single most powerful experience of their lives. I selected these quotations and I cut them all together, but I haven't enhanced the sound effects or the visuals in any way. This stuff is all in the movie, as you see and hear it right here. When it comes to Jesus movies, this movie is far and away the #1 choice of Christians. Adjusted for inflation, the Singing Jesus made $55 million at the US box office. The Horny Jesus made $13 million. But the Bloody Jesus? $370 million and still counting. Wait, did you see that? Let's go back for a second. You have to have a special effects guy with a little squirty thing just off camera to get this shot. Mel Gibson went out of his way to emphasize the blood. In fact, if you were to go through this film minute by minute and make a note every time that any blood, violence, or suffering were depicted on screen, it would look like this. The first 10 minutes go by without much gore, but for the remaining 109 minutes, only 6 contain no blood, violence, or suffering. Any film represents hundreds or thousands of individual decisions made by the director. Mel Gibson could have made his Jesus movie any way he wanted to, and he chose to make it this way. And he was right. Christians said, yes, this is the film we want.
They're dead.
Of hearing about all of the radicals and the perverts and the liberals and the leftists and the communists coming out of the closet. It's time for God's people to come out of the closet, out of the churches, and change America. We must do it. We've got to raise up an army